Hello and welcome back to my channel. My name is David and we are back with a weekend reading wrap-up. In fact, I'm going to be wrapping up essentially 2 weekends worth of stuff because I missed last week's and I didn't want to avoid talking about the ones I finished over the course of that time. So, I'm going to start off with the most recent one that I finished. I finished last night. The Frugal Wizard's Handbook for Surviving Medieval England by Brandon Sanderson. This is Secret Project number 2. I've read both of the secret projects so far, and I found the first one, Tress of the Emerald Sea, to be absolutely delightful. A really enjoyable read. Lots of fun. Everything was falling into place really well, for the most part, with the humor. I'm not a super fan of the character who ends up being the narrator of that. So I know there are people that enjoyed it even more than I would have, but I did enjoy every bit of that read. Secret Project 2, not nearly as much. It was fine. It was enjoyable enough. It reeled me in the last third, more than I had expected. But overall, I just was not impressed. It was... So to compare, earlier this year I read Essex Dogs by Dan Jones, historical fiction. Absolutely brilliant. Loved every minute of it. That is medieval history done right. This was... I'd rather pick up Alcatraz by Sanderson and read that. It is easily in the bottom tier of Sanderson books that I've read. Now, putting it into perspective, that's like me saying, so I'm doing the Sound and Vision project where I'm listening to a Bowie album, David Bowie, every 2 weeks. And we're closing in on about the halfway point. And to put it in perspective, most of the Bowie albums are really, really good compared to most other people. So even the bad ones are better than a lot of other artists' okay ones. And the same holds true with Brandon Sanderson. I still enjoy his stuff. It was still an enjoyable read, but it was just not a great read by any means. And probably not one I would ever revisit. Let's be honest. So, next book I'm going to talk about is, I continued my reading through the Barsoom series. I finished The Mastermind of Mars. This is a really interesting one. This was relatively short, 160 pages. It flew right by, just like every Burroughs book has. And just really, really enjoyable. Dealing with a new character who basically is training under somebody else to be able to transplant organs from one body into another and be able to reanimate that person. All with the intent of being able to transplant this person who's trained him, their mind, into a more youthful body. And a deal is basically struck that they will do this for each other and they will both essentially have eternal life. But of course, things don't always just play out like that. Really interesting. I ended up really enjoying the character, even though I didn't know him at the start. And as you'll find out later, he does at least get mentioned in the next book. I'm not very far into it. So it's nice seeing the interconnectedness on those. So the next book I want to talk about is probably my favorite read right in here, at least of the ones I finished. I loved every bit of The Demolished Man by Alfred Bester. This was his first full novel, apparently. It had a foreword by Harry Harrison, so I read that. Absolutely enjoyed it. This is a book set in a future where some people are able to read minds, and they're known as espers. And so as a result, no murder has been committed in over 70 years. Because obviously your thoughts are going to broadcast some of that intent. And so if somebody picks that up, they're able to stop you prior to you committing that murder. Until one of our main characters in this book does get pushed to the brink and commits murder. And so you know from very early on who did it. You know why they did it. And so then it flips, and you are following mostly a detective who is trying to not necessarily solve the crime, because he knows, but he needs to be able to provide solid evidence to prove the crime. And so following how that all plays out, and this was delightful. Easily one of my favorite reads so far this year. Could not praise this highly enough. And so that tells me that I need to read even more Bester. I've got one more book of his on my shelf, and I'm probably going to try to roll into that as soon as I can, relatively speaking. I finished the March-April 2023 issue of Asimov Science Fiction. It was fine. It was mediocre. There were some high points, I guess, but as a whole, like even the Greg Egan story in here was not great. The poetry in here was not good. The most interesting thing, by far, came in the opening pages of this book. So let's get to it here. Which was The Kennington Stone by Robert Silverberg, reflecting on a stone that was found in Minnesota and trying to tie it back into Vinland area, Icelandic, Vikings, Norse, that time frame, to prove that they had been to North America and had gone further inland and all of that by a certain date, and just kind of an info piece. And that was the highlight of the book. I'm not sure if I'm going to get another Asimov's. I mean, Steve Donahue says the next issue that just came out of Analog is really good. Maybe I'll pick it up and see if he's right. Maybe not. I don't know. I'm underwhelmed, to say the least. I finished Bowie, the biography by Mark Spitz. This was written while Bowie was still alive, 2008, 2009. And it was at a point where Bowie hadn't put out an album in quite some time. And I don't usually read biographies, but this was really enjoyable as a biography. I had no problems reading through it. It was hard prioritizing. But when I would pick it up, I had a very easy time reading it. And so if you're interested at all in the life of David Bowie, that is one I can strongly recommend. I've got just a couple more. Bradbury Speaks, so this is Too Soon from the Cave, Too Far from the Stars. I can't remember if I talked about this in my last one or not, so I'm talking about it again here. I did finish this one probably about 2 weeks ago. That's why I'm not sure if it was prior to the video or not. But as a whole, most of them were enjoyable. All of them are enjoyable in the writing style. Bradbury has a very unique and a very engaging writing style, but some of the topics just weren't as engaging. I'm glad I read them. There are some that I'd probably reread again at some point in time. But yeah, enjoyable as a whole. So, we've got two more here that I've finished. We'll start with this one. Superman in the 40s. It's sent to me by Michael K. Vaughan, along with a bunch of Man of Steel volumes. So, I figured I should start with Superman in the 40s. And did really enjoy this. It's interesting seeing how his character kind of grew and evolved. There's a couple of pieces in here where it would talk about, the Superman himself, milestones, so it kind of laid the groundwork for some of the issues that followed and what you would see. And so, the art style would obviously grow and change over the course of time. You can see a very clear difference as you progress along. And, some of the stories were pretty tame and not great. Other stories were absolutely fantastic. So, as a whole, I'm very, very glad I read that one. Thank you, Michael. And I am excited at some point in time, kind of soonish, to jumping into Man of Steel. I've got a lot of comics that are building up. So, this is one I checked out from the library as part of my 40 before 40, and this is a video that's going to come up tomorrow talking about this one. This is Phoenix Resurrection, The Return of Jean Grey. This was written, I think, in 2018. It has 5 issues. So it has Phoenix Resurrection, The Return of Jean Grey, issues 1 through 5. So it's by Matthew Rosenberg, who did the writing on it. And, you know, it's got some good artwork in there. And the story as a whole was okay. It was certainly not my favorite by any means of X-Men stories. And, you know, it had some things that really just surprised me. You know, Jubilee taking a bite out of something like she's a vampire. What? Yeah. You know, characters that I'm not familiar with because I haven't grown with the comic in time. So I had to kind of look up who some of them are. But, you know, not a bad read either. I have successfully, for about 3 weeks now, read an X-Men comic every day. So going parallel to Michael's read a Superman every day. And that's been going really well for me. So one I'm finishing tonight for sure, because I've got just 2 issues left to read in here. And that is this Conan the Barbarian, The Curse of the Golden Skull. So this is Epic Collection. This is volume 3 in the Marvel Epic Collections. I also had volumes 1 and 2 that I have read prior to this and really enjoyed. And I think I've enjoyed volume 2 the most, but all of them have been great. At some point in time, I'm going to make a video talking about the 3 Epic Collections as well as the other Conan collection, because all of them were sent to me courtesy of Michael K. Vaughan. And of the 4, one of them stands head and shoulders above the others. But I do want to talk about all of them, because the more Conan that we can talk about on this channel, the better. Let's just be honest. Robert E. Howard is outstanding. So, kind of a mini haul here. I did go to Free Comic Book Day at my local comic store yesterday. So I've got a couple of comics I picked up. So I've already read this one. This has got Uncanny Avengers. And it's also got some X-Men in here. It did have a little bit better X-Men, even though it was shorter than a previous year that I picked up. So The Fall of X begins at the Hellfire Gala, summer 2023. I don't know. I'm tempted. I've never tried to keep up with regular issues. Maybe I'd try to do that, just this Fall of X, and see how it goes. But at the same time, I would want to wait and get the trade paperback when it comes out, because I'd much rather read it in that format. I don't know. I picked up Conan the Barbarian, which I'm planning on reading tonight as well. So I'm going to set this over here with my Conan book, because I need to be sure to read that. Got Marvel Voices, which I have not read yet. Spider-Man Venom, which I did read earlier. It's got a bonus of special preview of a new series by Jonathan Hickman and Brian Hitch, which was okay. This was decent. They had a couple older issues, so I picked up Canuck Beyond and Captain Battle. Looks interesting. We'll see how it goes. I picked up RuneScape, Untold Tales of the God Wars, because it looks interesting. And Mech Cadets, which also looks interesting. As a whole, I was underwhelmed by the offerings. I also picked up the Star Wars one, which is up in my son's set of stuff, which I read that one last night and enjoyed that one too. I'd also had some Avatar the Last Airbender on the second half. So I gotta move along quickly because I'm running out of time. Castles and Warfare in the Middle Ages, I'm still working my way through very, very slowly. I'm about 32, 33 pages in. Really enjoyed this so far. I'm working my way through Fighting Man of Mars. I'm only a couple of chapters in. I think I've finished chapter 1, maybe chapter 2? I don't know. Yeah, I've only finished chapter 1 and the forward kind of introduction in here. But I know I'm going to enjoy it. I've made just a little bit more progress on Enemy of God by Bernard Cornwell. Still really, really enjoying that one. I've made a little more progress on Ethelred the Unready by Levi Roach. I'm about to start chapter 2 on that one. Really, really enjoying that. I'm not big on biographies, but I'm enjoying that one. So I've got 3 more to talk about here. I've made some more progress on Saga. which is just great. It's big because this has the first 9 volumes of trade paperbacks in there. I'm through, I think, about the first 4. My daily X-Men reading right now is in Messiah Complex, which is going outstanding. This is outstanding. My next X-Men collection I'm going to do, I had an interlibrary loan that I put in on my local library, so they were able to get the Fall of the Mutants. So got plenty of X-Men comics in there from the 80s, so somewhat older, taking a step back from the 3 more modern ones back into a good era. And then I've started listening to, so I picked up both an audiobook and a physical book of To Sleep in a Sea of Stars by Christopher Paolini, based on a situation that I believe I may be getting an opportunity to review the prequel. So I'm going to try to chip away at some of this to lay some groundwork before that arrives, if it does in fact arrive here. And even if it doesn't, I'm taking it on face value, the word of Steve on this one, that it is outstanding. So I expect it to be so. And then the last book that I don't have with me because it's out in the car is Block and Bradbury, which are some short stories by Robert Block and Ray Bradbury, which are fantastic so far. So I'm out of time. I needed to make this quick. Sorry for going so fast through a lot of this, but I will catch you later.